right. Welcome and thank you for attending our presentation today. My name is Ryan Sullivan and I am one of the Design Awards chairs along with Stephanie Ng. And today we'll be hearing from John and Yetman to talk about tips from a pro on entering your best design award submissions ever. First, we would like to thank our 2021 virtual and digital connectivity sponsors who generously supported our virtual programs and events throughout the year. So these are some of those sponsors. And also a special thank you to our current 2021 AIA Honolulu Design Awards sponsors. Also, we want to do a little quick plug here. Be sure to sign up for this very exciting event coming up design on September 30th to October 1st. It's called DNA Design Plus Architecture. This event will have both virtual and in-person events taking place over 2 days with topics covering the future of design and the built landscape. The event will feature a lineup of prominent local and mainland speakers to share their perspectives on a wide variety of topics, from resiliency to community innovation to housing and green infrastructure. Also, by attending this event, you'll be able to secure nearly a dozen HSW credits, as well as have an opportunity for in-person networking. Since this is our first event for 2021, I'm sure everybody's kind of antsy to see each other. So we look forward to once again being able to see each other in person. Tickets to this event are currently available now, and the early bird rates are ending July 31st. So get your tickets now. All right, so now onto our presentation. Just to let everyone know, a little housekeeping before we start. If anyone has any questions during the presentation, could you please type them into the chat? Make sure it's addressed to everybody. And at the end of the meeting, we'll go through as many of the questions as we can. So I'll kind of collate what we see in the chat and we'll kind of ask those questions at the end of this presentation. So today we'll be hearing from John and Yetman. John has 25 years of experience working in communications and marketing for the architecture profession. She was also the editor of Texas Architect magazine, where she directed marketing and business management for the magazine, as well as the public outreach and communications effort of the Texas Society of Architects. In 2001, she founded CYMK to work directly with architects to bring stories about their work to a wider audience. As a part of this work, she has developed a specialty in preparing AIA fellowship submittals and has helped more than 110 candidates from around the country achieve elevation to the College of Fellows. She also regularly gives presentations and workshops on the AIA fellowship process, as well as architectural marketing, and has also authored several novels. Please welcome John and Yetman.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Can everyone hear me? Yes?
Yep.
So I'm really glad to be here today. I wish I was there with you in person, obviously. When I told everyone I was doing this, you know, everyone was like, oh, you're going to go, right? You're going to go to Hawaii. I'm like, no. So I am in Austin, Texas. And since I can't be with you in person, I thought I would show you a picture of my city, which is constantly changing. So actually this photo is already outdated. But just imagine a lot more cranes in the sky and a few more buildings here in the foreground. So I work in Austin. And I have been working from home for over 20 years. And so last year, everyone moved into my office. So that was fun. But I really have worked only with architects doing communications and marketing, as Ryan said. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about design awards. And so I'm a writer. So I'm going to start by talking about the narrative portion of typical design awards entry, and then we're going to talk a little bit about photography and take a look at some successful strategies. So like I said, I'm a writer, so I always approach design awards as kind of a storytelling exercise. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about what kinds of tools you can use to turn your design award submittal into a story about your project that will really engage the jury that's reviewing it and help them understand the significance of your project and hopefully convince them to give it an award. So the first thing you want to think about with any story that you write or anything is, what are the whys of your story? What is it that you're trying to achieve? and who is your audience. So when you think about what are the whys of a project, those are the things that, let's say that's what the project is about. So that could be any number of things. Your project could be about sustainability. It could be about the unique use of materials. It could be about creating a healthy workplace. It could be about creating a green school or a waterfront residence. Think about what your project is about, and start to kind of jot those ideas down, and always keep those in mind when you are putting together your submittal. So what you're trying to achieve, obviously, is you're trying to convince this jury to give you a design award. And so what I'm trying to emphasize there is that you don't want to beat around the bush. Like, you really want to convince them. So you have to give them reasons to do that. And the way that you do that is you don't allow them to fill in the blanks. So anything you need them to know, you need to come out and tell them, because they're not going to fill in the blanks for you. And then think about who your audience is. So obviously in the design awards, your audience is other architects, but they could be different kinds of architects depending on what award you're submitting for. So if it's a AIA award versus an education design award, or a steel construction award, for example, think about who your audience is and what it is that they're looking for. What is it that they need to know to decide that, that your project is a winner? So again, give them the tools to do that. I want to talk a little bit about what story ingredients are. So when you think about story, again, this is any kind of writing. Anytime you're writing about anything, these are things that you can use in your narrative to kind of help it come to life and to really bring the reader along. So what you want to always be doing is being in communication with your reader and not losing them. So there are different ways you can do that. So these 5 things are some of your ingredients, and I'm not saying that you need to use all 5 in everything that you write ever, but you could use 1 or 3 or 2. So think about these things. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about what that looks like in terms of narrative. But these are things that you can use that will help bring the reader along. So the first thing is experience. So by that, I mean, tell the reader what it's like to be in this building, right? What is it like to experience it? Does it evoke any emotion or any kinds of feelings or responses? You can just use the words to describe the intangible and the things that are invisible in the photos. And I'll get into a little bit more detail about that. The picture that I'm showing here is a picture of the new Austin Central Library. And I'm using this picture because, you can look at this picture and get a sense of what it's like to be in there. But I can tell you that, so this is a building with 5 floors, with each floor has, one of these MC Escher looking staircases here. And I can tell you that if you're a person with a fear of heights like me, when you get to about right here, you want to die. Like, it's a terrifying building for someone like me, but it creates emotion. Now that's a negative emotion. Obviously, you don't want to put that in your design awards, but I'm saying for someone who doesn't have a fear of heights, this is an exhilarating experience. And my daughter loves to go to the library and go up and down the stairs. And it is something to have been in that space and to use that feeling and turn that into narrative. Now, obviously your own projects you've been in, so you can do that. Someone like me who writes a lot about buildings that I've never been in, that's a little trickier to do. But think about what it is like to be in the spaces that you design, and think about what the photos that you're using are not able to convey. And one thing I'll say is, and I put here, be creative. And I'll say this about everything. So architects that I work with, whenever you talk about your work, you're very eloquent and you are very clear, and you have a very clear vocabulary and way of thinking and talking about your work. So if you feel like you have trouble writing about your work, one thing you can do, and this is a little goofy, but you can talk about the project and just record yourself talking about it, and then transcribe what you said and work with that and turn that into a narrative, because that's often what I do with my clients. I just talk to them and I write down what they say. And they're not even realizing everything that they're telling me. They're so used to talking about the work. But as soon as they sit down to write something, they get nervous. So that's one, if you feel like you're staring at a blank piece of paper, that's definitely something that you can try to do. You can also talk about talk to other people who have been in the building, and get their impression of what they feel like when they're in there. Another aspect of good storytelling is to point out any kind of novelty. So I use this equally terrifying picture of the pool in the sky, just because obviously that's a pretty novel feature. But I don't mean that your project has to have something like this. It doesn't have to be something this big. It can be something either a new solution to an old problem, some kind of innovation that your project contains, but it can also just be a simple little moment, whether that's the way a shadow is projected onto a wall during a certain time of day, or if there's a little space in a building that is, that's a cozy little area. Think about what are the little moments in your work that would really grab someone and make them think, oh, I really love this space. I really would love to be there. That looks like a wonderful thing that this architect designed, and it enriches the submittal. Another thing to think about is contrast. So this works really well for renovation and adaptive reuse projects. So in those kinds of projects, I would definitely focus on the before and after, and talk about what exists now that didn't exist before. What does this project save, for example, if there was some risk of something being lost? And then also in just regular projects, what is different about this project? How is this project different from other schools? How is it better than office buildings that were designed 10 years ago? Another thing to think about too is their attention in design. You can contrast between things like transparency and solid in the way that you talk about the building. Is there a contrast between neutral tones and splashes of color, or the volumes and proportions? Talk about those relationships, and that really kind of helps put the reader into the project more as well, because you don't want them to just give them a description of the project. Like I said, you want to really make them understand what it's like to be there. Community is another one. And so by this, I don't mean, is your project a community project? This refers more to, is there a shared purpose or understanding about this kind of project? Do we all agree on what a good project of this kind does or is? So for example, and again, this is a way to bring the jury along to say, look, we're all in this together. We all agree that this is something that we value. So for example, this morning I was talking with a client who designs police stations in small communities and sort of suburban communities. And so we were talking about the context that he's working in, and he was saying that he makes a point to make the police stations always transparent on the street facade, so that the public can look in, and that inside that there are open sight lines and people can look at each other. So in a situation where obviously it's probably a high tension space, having that sense of openness helps ease some of the stress of being there. But more importantly, you know, the transparency from the street, from the public looking into the building, is not only nice architecture, but it conveys a sense of transparency that we want to see in our police departments, especially you know, these days. We want to know what's going on in there. And so think about what does your project plug into that's a bigger idea than just the project. So that could be anything from whether it's part of a trend, or maybe it's going against a trend. Maybe it's making some kind of statement about gentrification, for example, or it's contributing to the rehabilitation of a certain precinct, or you know, there's any number of things what the project does that's bigger than just itself, if that makes sense. And then finally, clarity and vocabulary. So this is really about the language. Like, are you being clear? Are you making yourself understood, or are you being super architect-y and being sort of hiding behind jargon and kind of obscuring what you're really trying to say? So one of the things that I think this is on my website, that the thing that I always use in my own marketing is a quote by Bill Caudill, the Texas architect, that he said, if they haven't understood you, you haven't said anything. So the burden on being understood is on us, the writer, and not on the reader. You know, it is not their job to try to decipher what it is that we mean when we're writing. So again, think about what words you're always using when you talk about this project. This is another way when you could just record yourself or sit down and chat with someone and have them take notes about how you talk about this building. So create a vocabulary. And I'm going to have a little example in a minute about what I mean by that. Use verbs. You know, talk about what the design does rather than using adjectives to describe what it looks like. That gives the narrative more energy, and there's sort of a dynamic quality to it. And I almost actually titled this slide "Be Kind," because, you know, your reader, you want to be nice to them. You don't want them to feel like, they don't understand what you're saying. So now they're either feeling like, gosh, you know, maybe what am I not understanding? Or why is this person being, you know, so difficult in the way that they're writing about their project? Do they not want me to understand? So be nice to them. You know, probably the juror has to read a whole bunch of these, and the more clear and simple you can be in the narrative, the more successful it will be. I mean, I think you know, they want to get on your side. So, you know, the more that we can do that, the better it is. So tell me in the narrative, again, what is it like to be in this place? Why does it feel that way? What is it that you, as the architect, did to accomplish that? And what are the unseen gestures that contribute to this feeling? So what is it that they need to know that the photos aren't showing? And what does a stranger who has never seen this project need to know about the connection of the project to a bigger story? So like I said, is this part of you know, the rehabilitation of a downtown area? Or is this part of a new school design program? Or you know, how does this project live in the world? And then how can you use your words to align with the images that you're showing? So you don't want the words to duplicate what the images are showing. You want them to complement the images. And there's only so much work the images can do, although the images are obviously the centerpiece of any design award submittal. But think about how those two can work together and together provide a full story of the project. Because I've often seen jurors, they search the text for answers to questions that the photos bring up. So any question that you can anticipate by what you're showing in images, make sure that information goes in the text. Because if they're left with unanswered questions, they tend to either think, well, now I don't have enough information that I can give this project an award, or is there something that is not being told in this story, depending on how suspicious their nature is, I guess. So try to anticipate any of those kinds of questions and make sure you answer them in the narrative. So this is an example of a project narrative this is a project here in Austin, 310 at ACL Live. It's a little live music club. This was a really good example of having the text do a lot of work that the images couldn't do. So I've highlighted in yellow, basically all of the things that the jury needed to know about what about the pictures that they were looking at. So this is a small street level music venue. It's underneath ACL Live, which probably in Hawaii is not well known, but here in Texas is quite well known. So that places it in a certain area in Austin. It is on the sidewalk, so it defines the sidewalk as part of the venue. The doors open, and you can stand on the sidewalk and watch the show. So obviously it's a live music venue. So things like acoustics and the load in and load out requirements, and views to and from the stage, the circulation of the crowd, and then all the service needs for the bars and the restrooms and all that stuff, all have to fit into this very small space. Then there was the added consideration of protecting the walls from, being banged up from instrument cases, which then of course affects the material considerations, which then affects the acoustics. So these were all things that we wanted the jury to understand went into the design. So it wasn't just about, oh, look, here's a stage and here's some chairs. So additionally, sight lines and moving people around in the space was important. And, this big idea of combining intimacy with connection and combining use and experience in this small space. Those were all important design considerations. The words in the blue are vocabulary, what I was referring to as vocabulary, in not necessarily about the project so much, but in the way that you talk about the project. So again, there's only 4 instances in this whole write-up. And if you look at it, we use the words set the stage and rhythmic patterns and harmonizing and improvisation, which are all refer back to music. They can be musical terms. And so that just creates another layer of understanding and kind of a emotional response that you have just from the text. So it's really subtle, but I think it's quite effective. And I'm going to show you pictures of this now that I've talked about it just so you can see it. So this is at 310 Live. It's very small. So these doors open and you can watch the show from the sidewalk here.
I don't think we can see the photos.
Oh, can you not see that?
No, I'm still looking at the text.
Oh, you are. Oh, I need to, how do I change what screen I'm sharing? Oh, well, okay, never mind. Let me just go back to that. If you want to find it, it's 310 at ACL Live at sandersarchitecture.com here in Austin. Here is one picture that I did put in here. This is what it looks like from the street when when the doors are open. So these people here in the foreground are actually standing on the sidewalk. So it's a great place. That's my little marketing plug for Austin. So hopefully y'all will come visit and check it out. It's a great place. Okay, so that's a whole lot of stuff about narrative. And I want to talk a little bit about photography. I know photography is obviously it is the currency of architecture, architectural marketing. I also know that it is expensive. And, sometimes you are finding yourself in a position where you're up against a deadline and maybe you don't have professional photos. I want to emphasize that professional photography is really the most important asset in your marketing and business arsenal, because it really sets the narrative of what your firm's experience is, and where you have been and where you want to go as a firm in terms of marketing. And obviously for design awards, they are key. So without photography, you lose the narrative of your work. So it's important to invest in it as soon and as much as you can. So that being said, I talked to a friend of mine who is a photographer here in Austin. His name is Lars Frazier, and he's been an architectural photographer for about 25 years. And we had a conversation this weekend, which I ended up recording. And I wanted to share with you. And he talks about why architectural photography is important. But then I also asked him about what you can do as a stopgap measure if you're up against not having the budget for photography at the moment, with the understanding that, of course, that's what you're working towards. So I'm going to play that conversation for you. It's about 10 minutes long. So hopefully this will be of interest and hopefully help you decide to work with a photographer if you're not already. And I'll maybe give you some information about how to collaborate with them to get some better photos. And we're going to hope this works because it's in here. There it is. Okay. So let me know if this doesn't work.
Talk a little bit about why you think it's important for architects to hire professional photographers.
Well, there's a number of reasons, John, and I'll just start with the first one. We have equipment that is designed, our lenses, our cameras, the tripods we use, lighting systems. They're very specific to taking architectural photographs. For example, just a very simple piece of equipment would be what we call a tilt shift lens. Your average consumer doesn't have that. Consumer camera doesn't have that. And that allows us to shift the image parallel to keep all the lines correct. And that's a specific architectural lens. There's also so many other pieces in terms of the experience that we have with best times of day to photograph spaces. You have, from composition standpoint, we have, again, years and years of experience with looking at a space and knowing exactly where you need to start out. Certainly collaborating with someone is critical, because the designer, the architect, is the person that's their vision, and it's our job to capture that. But we also understand what sort of boundaries that we can shoot in that are going to give you the best image. We also have an immense amount of editing experience in terms of using Photoshop, using Lightroom or Capture One, some of the different software. And that's a really critical piece, because cameras can only capture so much light and dark in an image. And as an architectural photographer, what we'll often do is we will photograph light to dark exposures in multiple images, and then we will actually compose them. Some people call it HDR. I'm not doing HDR, but we'll manually compose those and paint in the areas that are dark and give you an exposure that's even all the way across the plane, and to give the image depth and life. There's also color correction. There's so many other pieces of the software that takes years to really learn. So, I mean, those are just a few things that we add to make an image beautiful. And a lot of it really does have to do with the equipment, the software, but also the years of doing it. And and practicing and becoming confident so that what we do make looks fantastic.
Mhm. So that's actually really helpful for folks to understand what it is they're paying for when they are hiring a photographer. So what would you say to people who maybe are looking at some design award deadlines in the next 6 months or so and just don't have that in their budget just yet? What are some easy things or some relatively easy things they can accomplish in the short term as kind of a stopgap until they can get on board with a photographer?
Sure. Now, it's there are really three things that are critical to architectural photography, and the first is a tripod. We often, to keep focus, we have to take a long exposure. So hand holding a camera, especially if you're indoors, it's just not going to cut it. So a really great sturdy tripod that can go up 6-8 feet is always going to be valuable for someone to start with, to put a camera on. And make sure you're shooting it at a high f-stop so that you can keep that focal plane together and everything is sharp. Shooting at f11, for example, for those that understand photography, is sort of the sweet spot for holding focus. We try and keep our ISOs down, and I'm getting a little technical here, but just the film speeds, the grain of the film, we try and shoot somewhere between 100 and 400. With our ISOs, again, to keep the grain nice and tight so it looks beautiful. The second piece, there's a tripod. Getting a camera that has the ability to shoot RAW files is really important. The RAW file has an ability to hold much more light to dark dynamic range. And so when you do edit it, you will have much more information there to work with. And also a lens that is minimum of 24 millimeters is the 24 millimeters is sort of the sweet spot. When you start getting into 17 millimeters, it starts to fish shy a bit and things get a little too wide. 24 is the standard for architectural photography. You may argue that, but I think it is. So in terms of a good width lens, 24 millimeter is fabulous. 28 even is really beautiful. So you want to be wide enough to, if you're in a tight space or a tight room, that you can see everything. There's also editing software, and bang for buck right now, Lightroom, Adobe Lightroom, I believe it's $10 a month with Photoshop. Lightroom is a very capable program where you can actually put 3 raw images into it with different exposures, and it will automatically compress those and allow you to retouch and turn it into one image, and then you can retouch it and work your highlights and your darks and balance them out using a brush. Of course, as I said, it takes us years to learn these programs. There's great tutorials for Lightroom that really, if you are willing to put some time in, and I know with architects, time is money, it'd be a big leap to buy a tripod, a camera, and Lightroom. But at the end of the day, if you have some experience and you're willing to put some effort into it and some time with Lightroom, and practice around your house, practice for interior shots, you know, pick angles, look at magazines, see what looks good, what you like, and pick angles and heights, camera heights, and test it out and put those into your Lightroom raw files, do several exposures, and see the results that you start to get, and you can start tweaking it and really make beautiful shots. As far as exteriors goes, if it's a building that really has a great deal of great shadow, you want to play with the shadow light details, shooting in the, you know, when the sun is on it can be really beautiful. I am more of a dawn dusk kind of shooter. I like to shoot just as the sun is just underneath the horizon, with some nice soft light, long exposure again, and it gives you a little bit softer light on the subject, so you're not going to get the harsh shadows that sometimes can be a little distracting. Same thing at dusk, shooting just after or just as the sun goes down. Again, long exposures. You can really get some beautiful glows in the sky, clouds, red clouds, and you turn the lights on in the house and you've got a really beautiful glowing house. And if you want to do something daytime, try and stay before 10 a.m. and after 3 or 4 p.m. If you're going to use direct sunlight. Get the sun to be at least having some direction with it. It's important to choose time of day for everything, for the rooms that you're going to shoot, for the exteriors as well.
So that all sounds like really good, just good knowledge to have when you're working with a photographer, so that you can be more collaborative and interactive with the photographer that you're working with, right?
Absolutely. And, don't be afraid to reach out to the teachers at the community colleges to see if there's some students or even at the universities that might have some interest in architectural photography. And it's a good low budget way to start a relationship with somebody who's learning. And because they do have some basic knowledge of things, my guess is they'll have the equipment to really still capture some images at a good price point that are going to be satisfactory for what your needs are. I just wanted to throw that in. As far as collaborating with photographers, it's critical. It's so important that photographers be open. You're the designers, you're the people, it's your vision, and it's our job to really capture your vision. You also have to try and understand as well that we do have parameters and constrictions with cameras that when it comes to exposures and lighting and things like that, that we also need to be able to explain to you why that shot maybe could be done better from a different angle or with different lighting. And sometimes we photograph spaces with all the lights off because it's just a much more beautiful available light shot. Some architects like the lights on. But I think it's important to really have strong communication and have some understanding if a photographer says, hey, this isn't working and here's why. There's too much light coming in over there and I can't get a great exposure, that, that we can solve for it together. That's just critical. And I think that, it's a long day together. You also have to trust, if you're hiring a professional photographer, that they do have a pretty good idea as to what works and what doesn't, and you have to trust that. I just think that's it's what we do all day long, and we're open to collaboration. We should be, and great relationships are based on that. So yeah, it's a little give and take. Shooting photographs is always a compromise. You're always compromising, and I think it's just, you can't have it all. It's just the way photography works. But you can get pretty darn close, and collaborations can often get you there.
That's really great advice. So hopefully people will be able to incorporate that into their work with photographers when they hire them, which we encourage.
Absolutely, absolutely, and have a great plan. Have a great plan. That's just, as with anything. But thanks so much for having me, Tom.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for doing this. It's great to see you.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so that was the more technical information about photography that I am able to provide. So hopefully that was helpful. So I want to be mindful of your time and have some time for questions at the end. So I'm going to jump into this kind of case study that I'm wanted to share with you. So when you're putting together your submittal, again, think about, who am I talking to? What do I need them to know? And how can I show and tell? So this is a project in Austin that had been submitted a couple of times to design awards and wasn't winning anything. And so the folks at Stanley Studio got together with me, and we redesigned their award submittal. So I wanted to kind of show you a before and after for this little project, which is a sweet little pool house and swim center in a Austin suburb. So these pictures that I'm showing you, and actually the sequence, was the submittal that they had submitted that had not been successful. So these were also, I'm not sure who the photographer was here. I think they might have done these in-house. I'm not entirely sure. The photos are obviously, you know, good photos. They're a little, I don't know, they seem a little dark to me. They're a little, not quite, this is not screaming day at the pool to me. So there's a lot of concrete, obviously, and there's a whole lot of sustainable features in this project. So this is the sequence that the original submittal was in. So you've noticed we haven't even seen any plans or anything yet. So we've kind of gone through this. We've got this aerial view and we've got another aerial view. And now we've got a plan. And these plans are beautiful and they're perfectly legible and they look great, but they didn't make an appearance until 2/3 of the way through the submittal. And actually, once you see these plans, you don't see a whole lot of the bathhouse anymore. You move out to this park area, which is also nice. It has a lot of, alludes a lot to the the airport that was previously at the site. So it's a cute little project. That submittal, you know, with these photos was not grabbing me and making me want to go there and spend a day at the pool or at the park. They felt a little flat. And this was the narrative. And the narrative really focused on the sustainable systems that were in the building and kind of wrote everything from arm's length, sort of talking about the features of the building, but not really having any energy in it that really conveyed how great this little building is. So what I really wanted when we redid it, they had it reshot and we reworked the text to really give the project the energy that it deserves and to articulate how much work this little thing was really doing. So these are the new photos. So right there, you can see the difference. It's a beautiful blue sky, it makes you want to go to the swimming pool. You immediately notice that there's a green roof up here, which was not totally obvious in the previous pictures. This looks much more inviting. This, you know, with this, the light is so much better. The color is so much better. You have this little lovely shadow on the wall here that's animating that space. And you have an actual child who one would expect to see at a pool. We moved the site plan and the other plan information to the very beginning. So you're immediately aware that this is a park complex within a suburban community. You have a much better connection to, you know, where this is. And then you have a pretty nice, clear plan about that shows the building and the elements of the building. And then we move through the building. And again, the light is so much better here. The play of shadows on the surfaces, having people in the photos really enlivens them. This actually shows so much more color than the previous photos. You have the color of the cisterns and the red on the gates and things. And there's some green in there as well. Another cute little small person in the pool, very, you know, a happy little picture that's kind of making you want to go here. This sense of shelter and refuge that you get in these little courtyards versus, you know, the things that are out by the pool. They reused some of these pictures. These are the same from the previous submittal, but this is a new one where we labeled the aerial shot so we could make sure that the jury very clearly understood what all technical elements were in this little building. So you have a key that shows the 2 green roofs and the 2 cisterns and you know, the runoff sheds for the landscaping. So these are all things that the previous submittal didn't convey. And then we return back to these photos that were used in the original submittal. And here, again, the text now changes. The blue text is really talking about what the building does, what the pictures don't necessarily show, but also like creates this language of sort of being grounded in place and being a very kind of intentional and mindful building that had a strategy, that had a sustainable strategy, and that there are things going on behind the scenes here that that aren't obvious to everyone. The yellow text is really kind of more an aspirational text. It's really talking about all the beauty of the design and what it feels like to move through these spaces. So this was kind of an intentional way to make the building really be this little engine that could. This building that's very, very humble, very simple, but it's doing a whole lot of work on a number of fronts. So with this change, this project won both an Austin Design Award and it's won a TXA, a state award in Texas. And I think it's in contention for a number of other awards right now. So they definitely saw a change with that submittal with the new photography. So just a couple more things. I wanted to talk about using your home field advantage. I don't know if you in Hawaii get architects from out of state who come and work in Hawaii and then submit design awards there. And we certainly have that here in Texas from out of state architects. One thing that you want to think about doing is making sure that you are talking about and emphasizing the context and culture and history of your state and your place. Making the reader understand that why the building looks the way it does and why it absolutely has to be in the place that it is. So this is knowledge that you bring because that's where you're practicing, and you can educate the jury about the challenges and opportunities that practicing in Hawaii brings. Don't assume that they know that. They don't. They might think they do, but they probably don't. And also consider the competition. Obviously, everybody knows who else is probably going to submit and probably what they're going to submit. So keep that in mind as well and know what you're up against, and try to really own the achievements of your project and make sure that you're being very clear in articulating them. And then just one more word about your long-term strategy, thinking about awards. When I worked in an architecture firm, I tried to constantly be talking to the project manager, the project architect about a building that was in progress to see what I could learn about it. It would help me sort of move along with the project as it was being completed so that it wasn't this brand new thing to me when it was finished and then I'd have to write about it. It also helped me think about what awards this project might, qualify for, whether it was some sort of, construction awards or green building award or whatever. So try to be engaged from the start of the project. One of the things that Lars suggested too was to include photography in the project contract. That would be something where you could say in the contract that you will be allowed 2 days of access to the building to shoot it 30 days or 60 days after completion. And that it gives you a little bit of a safeguard in the event that you and the client maybe aren't completely in love anymore at the end of the project. It's just something that's in the contract that you then don't have to come back and ask for. And then also, you're going to shoot it. And so it's in the schedule, it's in the budget. Like I said, keep a file of the project as it's going and constantly refine it and gather as many collateral materials as you can about it. Build the relationships with photographers. You can certainly, think about using different photographers for different kinds of projects. Cultivating new talent on littler projects that you have maybe, and building a strong relationship with established photographers who can really put your work forward in the very best light. And then research and budget and plan and make it part of your business strategy. moving forward. If you're going to make awards part of your marketing story, then they deserve to be sort of, to get as much attention as the your RFQs and those kinds of things. So that is basically it. And I wonder if we have time for questions, just a few minutes. I welcome your questions, and I just, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but first I'm just going to say thank you very much for having me. And I'd love to hear your questions. So I'm going to turn this off so I can see you. Okay.
Yeah, and so far, I think you've done such a thorough job that no one's had any questions as you were going.
I was going really fast too.
All right, we got one question. In your opinion, are all projects award worthy?
All projects? Well, probably not. I think you can think about how to get the most out of every project. I mean, there are certainly aspects of projects that could be award worthy, even if you didn't show an entire project. If you made, if you focused on certain aspects of it. And there's so many different kinds of awards now that, that aren't just straight design awards for entire buildings, but that recognize different aspects of what buildings do, and maybe detail awards and things like that. Those are always worth looking into. I don't know if every project is, but I would say most projects have something that could be awarded or could be submitted.
Does anybody else have any questions they want to type in, or even, I guess at this point, you can even just ask. Oh, we got another question here. What do you find to be the biggest problem with submittals you see?
Yeah, the biggest problem is, it is that photography issue, that because you have to sort of think about these jurors are looking at submittals, one after the other, and, you've got good photography, and then here comes one, with less than good photography. And it's immediately this kind of record scratch sound where you're like, "Urgh." And now the project has to overcome that, right? And so, if you get a jury that's like, okay, the photography isn't great, but I really see something here. I can tell that this is an award-worthy project. It just gives the jury an extra thing to climb over, which is what we're trying to avoid, right? We're trying to make it as smooth as possible. The other thing, I was actually was talking to my friend who now does the awards here in Texas, and the first thing she said was, tell people who are submitting more than one project to make their entries all look different, because the jury can tell. They tend to be able to tell if the project is by the same architect. And then sometimes you get a situation where they're looking at two projects and they're going, well, we like both of these, but I can tell these are from the same firm, so let's just pick one. So it just is another kind of, factor that you could avoid if possible. And I thought it was funny that was the first thing that she said. So
that's a good point. Oh, we got two more questions coming up. Would you recommend catering your presentation to the judges and their specialties?
I'm actually not a fan of that. I'm a believer in, if you put your best submittal together, then it will be successful on its own merits. And I go into everything I do with the idea that it's my job to fill in any knowledge gaps, and I just assume there are knowledge gaps. So whether that's in a certain building type, like, oh, this person knows nothing about school design, then it's my job to fill in those blanks for them. So I tend to not do that. Some people may differ in their approach there, but that's my approach. All
right, and I think we have time for one more. And so this one is saying, is it worth showing technical or non-wow areas that share the complexity of the project?
Yeah, I mean, if that is part of the why of the project, if the technical innovation or the technical complexity is that why, then absolutely, yes. If you can show it in a way that a non-technical person can understand and get excited about, certainly there's a way I've done it where we've put technical drawings right alongside the finished building, so you could see the correlation between the technical and the final design. And I think, obviously that's of interest to architects, and I think they can understand that. So if you could figure out a way to communicate it in a way that they can understand, and if it is an important part of the story of the project, then yeah, I would think so. I think that would enrich the story significantly.
All right, well, it's 1 o'clock now, so right on time. We really appreciate you coming and giving us these amazing tips and strategies, and I think everyone here is going to leave here with a lot of good information to go forward their presentation. So thank you very much for coming.
Great, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, I guess that's about wraps it up, everybody. So thank you for coming and listening. And if anyone has any other questions they think of after the fact, maybe we can figure out a way to get it over. But in the meantime, I think that kind of sums up everything for today. So see y'all later.